Just a little more than 24 hours to go until the Iowa caucuses begin. Some candidates are sprinting to the finish line, while others are taking a more relaxed approach. Joining us live from Iowa City is Sky News political reporter Annalise Nielsen. Annalise, talk us through the mood on the ground. You've been traipsing through mostly the snow there to try to get a feel for things.
Have indeed. Luckily, it has warmed up a bit, around 10 degrees Celsius, which is pretty balmy for Iowa in February. It hasn't slowed down any of the candidates, though. We've seen a flurry of activity from some of them, but not all. What's been really interesting about this Iowa caucus campaign is that three of the main contenders, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar, have been caught up in Washington, stuck in the impeachment trial, and that's really kept them away from a number of key events here on the ground. And we've seen Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar really taking advantage of these 2 days over the weekend to get out to as many events as possible, having big town halls and rallies, meeting with lots of people. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, has taken a slightly different approach. If we look at today, he had 3 different office visits. Now, these offices don't take more than about 150 people in each room. A lot of that has been media, which has been very much restricted, but then also coming in as general public. And so each of those appearances was only about 10 minutes. And so that's something where you can see he is trying to make himself a smaller target, because he is leading in the polls neck and neck with Joe Biden, the former Vice President of the United States. So he's doing quite well in his campaign. One of the big discussions has been about the next debate and changes to the rules, which have allowed Michael Bloomberg to also, looks like he'll be taking the stage as well. It seemed like Bernie Sanders did take a bit of a swipe at that in one of his events today.
And we understand that in America, it is absolutely imperative that we have a vibrant democracy. I don't want billionaires buying elections. We don't want voter suppression. We want to have the highest voter turnout in the industrialized world, not one of the lowest voter turnouts.
Now, Michael Bloomberg has sidestepped the Iowa caucuses, entering the race a little bit later, but he's been spending plenty of money on ads. The big debate, though, will be who is going to come out on top in those Iowa caucuses tomorrow night. The last event for most of the candidates will be Super Bowl parties tonight happening around the state. As the saying goes, there's 3 tickets out of Iowa, so they're all vying for those top 3 spots to be considered really serious contenders. With the polling at the moment, it does seem like it is Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders leading the way. But what's really interesting is a key poll that usually comes out on the Saturday before between CNN and the Des Moines Register was blocked. It was actually blocked by CNN and the Des Moines Register themselves when there were questions about the methodology after a report that one person who was canvassed for it wasn't asked about Pete Buttigieg, one of the leading contenders in this race. And so they decided, in an abundance of caution, they said, to not use that poll. There's plenty others suggesting it's going to be a very tight field, and it all comes down to who turns out on a very cold evening in Iowa tomorrow.
The numbers of that turnout, talk us through a bit of a question without notice here, Annalise, but how many generally turn out overall for the Iowa caucuses? Because you mentioned Bernie Sanders and he goes to these small office buildings. It can be the difference sometimes just how many people you meet in the flesh. We know people sometimes are persuaded just by seeing the leader in the flesh. What sort of numbers are we talking in Iowa?
Absolutely. Some of these events, like, there's only been a few dozen people. Some of them range into the thousands. When it comes to caucus night, there's about 1,600 right around the state, and some of those are in living rooms almost, in just really small capacities. I was speaking to one place in Iowa City that they said in 2016 they had a record number of 925 people attend their their caucus centre, and they say that they're expecting even bigger numbers this year. The caucus numbers really broke the record in 2008 when it was Barack Obama coming up, because there were a lot of people really excited to come out for him. We didn't see them go quite as high last time. And so the question is going to be, has any candidate really got anyone enough excited to come out, or is there going to be that kind of apathy going into it again? And that's going to be really key for the whole election year. If there isn't a candidate that can get people fired up, the question I keep hearing asked at every different caucus event is who can beat Donald Trump? It's seen as the task that there's no assumption that they will have that momentum behind them, and so probably will be a safer result tomorrow. It looks like it would probably be a Biden or a Bernie Sanders taking the lead here, especially in Iowa City where I am, which is a university town. It tends to lean more towards the left, and so that's almost been guaranteed to me by the people on the ground. But of course you never know until the night.